everybody. Welcome to another episode of Pinpointe Unfiltered. I'm Rachel.
Josh, and today we are diving into something that we're asked constantly about: which New York City neighborhoods are actually worth the money right now, and which ones are just writing, old hype stories.
Exactly. And with rents hitting and breaking new records every month, and buyers are facing what they consider steep interest rates, people need to know where their dollars, stretch the most and where you're just paying for, just a hyped up zip code.
And we need to be real. Those best neighborhood articles and posts are mostly written by people that are don't live in the neighborhood and never lived in the neighborhood, and they just have an agenda, pushing the developers' agenda to make certain neighborhoods trendy. We will give you the real take on what it's like to live, and if it's actually worth your dollar.
Yep. And we've got no agenda here except giving you the unfiltered truth. So today we're going to cover three neighborhoods in Manhattan, Harlem, Lower East Side, and Hudson Yards, and two of which Josh and I have actually lived in.
And for each of those neighborhoods, we will break down the actual happening, what's happening on the housing market, what's lifestyle really like, and whether the amenities are worth the price tag.
Yeah, we're not just talking about where the cool bars and spots are. We're looking at practical things like grocery stores and noise levels and things like that.
Because at the end of the day, not every person in New York City is trying to be a real estate mogul, and it's not all about their return on investment. Um, you need to know what it's like to actually live in certain areas and what your life would be like.
Yeah, so whether you're renting or buying or just trying to understand the city better, we're gonna try and give you our no bullshit guide to these few Manhattan neighborhoods, at least for right now for 2025. So let's jump right in.
Let's tackle this.
First
All right,
up,
where do you want to start? Where do you want to start? Hold on, hold on. Where would you like to start this?
I was
You
gonna
want to
say first
work
up,
our way
Lower East
up,
Side.
or should we work our way down?
Let's start with your hood.
Okay, my hood. Lower East Side. I guess let me give you a backstory, I guess is the best way to start this, and
Let's do it.
to show my credentials of my expertise of the Lower East Side, or as the streets would say, show my street cred. My family is pretty much Lower East. Like, we've been in the Lower East Side since before I was born. My grandfather, when they came from Puerto Rico, settled in the Lower East Side. So like my mom grew up there, and when I was born, we've always had ties to the Lower East Side. So I was always going from Bushwick and like the Lower East Side. That those are the two neighborhoods that I claim the most, for being a New Yorker. So I've seen a lot of the Lower East Side over the last 40 years. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. So I think on that level, I have a good understanding of it. And then also, obviously, doing this, working plenty of deals on the Lower East Side. So I think I am a good person to talk about the Lower East Side. It's a blend, honestly. It's a blend of historic tenements and luxury new developments. That's the new thing that's kind of happening all over. It creates a it creates an interesting trend, or a interesting way of life, because I feel like it's almost like the epitome of New York, as everything is encompassed in, let's say, this small neighborhood where you have such historic, kind of like not flashy at all outside looking, buildings. And then right next to it, you have, a high rise that has like a rooftop bar and pool and like all the amenities you could ask for. So yeah, it's
This is
a
pretty stark difference.
all on the same block. It's like you'll get everything all on the same block. So I love that part of it. Uh, the historic, the importance of the Lower East Side. You got to remember, Lower Manhattan is the first part of, New York City. That's how it got developed. Started lower and then it, worked its way up. Um, Pretty much everyone. had to come through the Lower East Side. If you went to Ellis Island, they drop you off. All right, then you're gonna like come through. You're gonna be at the bottom part of Manhattan. Um, so you would probably live in the Lower East Side because everything else was, factories and we had the docks. The fish market was a huge thing way, way, way back when. Um, so yeah, its historic value is huge in New York, and to see it transform to what it is now with how hip and trendy it is. Where sometimes I'm walking in the neighborhood and I can't believe just like who my neighbors are. I'm like, kid, are you sure you're not lost? um, but I guess I could say that about myself now, where people are like looking like, sir, or I think you might be lost. This
So,
neighborhood is a little too cool for you.
yeah.
But plenty of shops, plenty of restaurants, ton of diversity in the Lower East Side. What else am I missing about the Lower East Side that I could
So
like
let's talk
mention?
about, you know, the cost of living there, how much apartments go for, if you know off the top of your head. Is there a lot of groceries? You said there's a lot of bars and restaurants, which is great. What about the commute? Like, how's the access to the train, stuff like that?
So it depends on where you're at the Lower East Side. The Lower East Side is not known for its transportation. Me personally, I live near South Street, so I'm right by the water. So my commute to the train is about 10 minutes, maybe 15, depending on what stop I want to walk to. Um, so that I wouldn't say,
Let's tell everybody that hasn't met you in person, you're a
oh,
tall person with very long legs, so you take very long strides.
so my 10 minutes for I guess normal sized people
Yes.
um
People like me.
would be I think I would almost put you in the miniature side, but whatever.
Thank you. Thank you. Rude.
Big heart, big heart.
No, I'm the Grinch. I have a small heart.
I would say about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yeah, I think it takes me about 15 minutes, like to
Yeah,
walk from the train to your house.
if you're walking with purpose, about
Yeah, if
15
you're
minutes.
strolling, it's
If you're
like a 20
strolling,
minute.
probably like 20. So with that, it's like, oh yes, very hip, happening neighborhood, but train's very far. That kind of sucks. So living right next to the water, it's extremely cold in the wintertime. Extremely
That
cold
wind.
in the wintertime. So that's not fun. If you're 20 years old, Lower East Side is one of the most fun neighborhoods to live in. Definitely one of the most fun neighborhoods to live in.
How's the noise in the neighborhood? Since there's lots of bars and young folk.
See, that's the thing. So my personal experience, I'm fine because I'm off of the bars. I'm not right on top of it. I'm just like a good 3 to 5 minute walk to it. But if you're on top of the bars, it's like I said, if you're in your 20s,
It's a bit rowdy.
it's a good fun time because you're not worried about people out and about at 3 in the morning screaming in front of your building. As I got a little bit older, I was like, I really don't need to have the whole bar at my doorstep.
I personally like my bars not at my doorstep, like I want to hang out in one place and then sleep in another. That's my personal preference.
Yeah, and close enough that I could like stumble home a bit,
Yeah.
but not so far that I'm like, oh, how am I gonna make it home?
No, like my place in Chelsea, right? Like I'm between ninth and 10th, so there's some bars on ninth, but most of them are on eighth, so that's fine. Like I'm not right on top of it, but I'm like 5 minutes away.
That's a perfect fit, and I feel the Lower East Side gives you a little bit like it gives you that because it has the pockets that it's hip happening, but then it also has the pockets that it's like, oh, this is nice and a bit quiet. Has some nice parks. So if you're a dog person or a park person, there are nice parks. They are actually renovating the FDR Drive, which is a huge project. I'm
So how does that
happy.
construction affect people that live there?
Well, I live right across the street from the construction, so it affects me quite a bit. It's been going on for the last 2 years now, I want to say. So traffic is a huge thing. um, less
2 years.
parking.
Damn.
So if you like, if you have a car, city life is a little difficult when you have a car because finding parking, excuse my language, is a bitch. Um, when we first moved, I think after 6 months, I gave up my car. I was tired of getting tickets. I would show up tired from the bar and I got to look for parking. And I was like, oh, leave it at the pump. Oh, leave it at the crosswalk. I got sick of it. So yeah, that is not what the Lower East Side is known for. But the level of diversity, like amongst food, people, even like nightlife, there's whatever you like, you could probably find in the Lower East Side. Like whatever you're into, there's a bar, there's a spot for you. Um, a lot of artists a lot of artists like coming down to Lower Side because there's great little venues for like music and even like galleries, like pop up galleries. So we get a ton of artists down there. But with that kind of stuff, raises prices. So now, yeah, we talked about some of the fun stuff with the Lower East Side. Now we're gonna get down to like what it actually takes. You asked about how much, pricing wise for like let's say just rent. Let's just start with rent. It varies. You still have a couple of the small mom and pop landlords that have like the building still. You might be able to find some real small, very small
Like old tenement
studios,
buildings?
like old tenement buildings where you can find a studio for I don't know, $1,200.
It's
You might,
cheap. Are
yeah,
you
but
sharing a
it's
bathroom in the hallway or some shit?
the office that I'm in currently is probably bigger than some of the studios down there,
Guys,
and I'm not in.
anybody that knows where he is, which most people probably don't know where he is, he's in a very small office. I think the office I'm in right now is bigger.
Put it this way, I think if I tried, I could touch both like walls with
With
either
your
hand,
with your hand.
with my arms. So yeah, um, I've seen that. But we also have the co-op buildings. Like I have a co-op. Those buildings that there were huge. I want to say like late '60s. There was like a huge rise of large high-rise buildings, especially downtown on the Lower East Side. So you have, let's say, like my buildings. You have um, buildings like Baruch, the Columbia buildings, and the Seward Park. Then you even have the Grand Street, Henry Street Settlement buildings. There are a ton of buildings that were built back in the late '60s that gave families. They were geared for the family, like to raise the family, and they are very spacious. So you'll get a ton of space in those buildings. But when developers come in, you know, they see more corporations coming into the neighborhood, those prices go up drastically. And it used to be when you live near the water, it was like, oh, those are the cheap apartments because you're so far from, let's say, any train. Now, when you're near the water, those are the expensive apartments
People
because
want the view.
yeah, I have a view of Brooklyn. I have a view of the bridge. I have like now people pay for those things. So so with that, the cost of living in the Lower East Side has skyrocketed. As I have a saying I tell all my friends. You want to live in a nice space with like fun things near transportation that's safe, it's gonna
Oh, you're gonna
cost
pay for
you.
it. Yeah.
As the Lower East Side became safe, more happening for I hate saying it like this, but the newbies, because that's what the market is really geared towards, not the
Hmm.
actual like New Yorker that's lived here forever, but the people coming in, because that's what's going to drive our like economy mostly. Um, we need to make it safe for them so they could come and spend money. Places like Lower East Side, places like Times Square, which we won't even like talk about as a neighborhood,
No,
but
that is not a neighborhood.
my in my lifetime, Times Square has changed drastically. Um, I feel Times Square a lot more. It's a little bit more evident because it's a lot more Disney. But even like I said, like the Lower East Side was very different when I was young compared to now as an adult. Still a great neighborhood to live. Think I don't know. I'm on the fence of do I like it more when I was younger or do I like it now? When I was younger, everything was just new and exciting, and it was sketchy. So I was into like, oh, there's like a illegal gambling spot here. This is kind of fun. Now I'm a little bit older. Long walks on the beach, and no, I'm joking. I'm joking. But yeah,
Ladies, he is single, by the way.
Lower East Side, great neighborhood. I'm not gonna spend the whole time talking about the Lower East Side because I can. But yes, the Lower East Side is a great neighborhood, attracting many different types of people. Rents vary, but because you're downtown, expect to pay top dollar.
So basically, I mean, it has a little bit of everything for everybody, right? You've got, like you said, those like super cheap, like closet-sized apartments in probably not well kept buildings, but if you're 20 nothing and you're just looking to be right by the bar, it's probably not a bad situation. And then you have like the extreme opposite, which is like, giant luxury buildings, and you pay top dollar and you're probably in a better location, um, within the Lower East Side, and you get all the amenities that you could possibly dream of, or something in the middle, like a co-op. Well,
That's
Josh,
something
thank you.
on another episode.
Yeah.
Why get a
So,
co-op?
yeah, that's a whole other monster. Thanks for such a detailed history on the Lower East Side. I wasn't sure we were going to go that deep, but I appreciate it because there's some things that I didn't even know about. So thank you. All right. Should we move up to Hudson Yards since we're going up the island?
Yeah, and it kind of makes sense. You go from one of the oldest neighborhoods to
One of the
brand
newest?
new. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so Hudson Yards, right, is a train station, right? It's a train yard. And
It was known
this,
for a lot of other things as well, but again, this is a family show, so
I mean, it's not really because I've been cursing up a storm up here, but I even mark it as explicit. No, I was gonna say like it's a train yard, and a very large developer decided to build on top of it, which is pretty cool if you think about it. Like, just building on top of a train yard. So there's still trains. They basically created a tunnel, and they built these massive buildings that are all like mixed use condos and retail and a shopping mall, a high-end shopping mall. And that allowed um, other developers to build, slightly smaller but also luxury buildings around it. And the ones that were already there now are valued a little bit higher because they're no longer in no man's land, right? And Josh, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that said developer also was one of the driving forces behind the 7 train being all the way out there.
yes, years ago, like before Hudson Yards became what it is now, that empty space, pretty much. It was under consideration to build sports stadiums.
Mm.
That's where the Jets and Giants were supposed to put. So they built the new MetLife, um, but before they built the MetLife, that was supposed to be built in Hudson Yards, and then that fell through. The people didn't want it. Another developer came in and made that, and the whole part of the 7 train was always going to be. It was going to happen regardless because you needed people to be able to
Get
get to
to
the
either the
ballparks.
stadium or, yeah.
So instead of ballparks, now it's like the mall. What's that honeycomb thing that I love? I call it the bee thing. The vestibule.
The vessel.
Vessel, that's what it is, the vessel.
Yeah, that's where people
No, it's
who,
like tourist stuff.
and for people that are not happy with their lives and they decide to take a leap,
Uh,
sadly. But they were supposedly making it a little bit harder to do that. which is much
Yeah, I remember
appreciated
they
for the
closed it
community. We
for a
should
bit.
we shouldn't make it easy for that.
So
If
yeah,
anybody is thinking of suicide, please call the
please
suicide
don't.
hotline.
Yes.
We are
Um,
not professionals here.
so yeah, Hudson Yards, the ballpark fell through, and whenever something goes awry, someone else is going to come in and like
Swoop
there's
in,
an
yeah.
opportunity. There's always an opportunity, and
Yeah.
that was a great opportunity for a brand new high end neighborhood.
So I think it's like it's kind of interesting because we are, New York City is short of housing, right? And putting a stadium there probably wouldn't provide any housing. It would provide temporary jobs to build it, and then it would have jobs like to run it, but not that many compared to um, how much housing you could provide. However, that housing is really outside of most New Yorkers' reach.
Um, Outside of most people, we're talking
Well,
like
the condos, yeah, the condos are millions of dollars, but let's talk about some of the luxury rentals that are in that neighborhood, right? Like at right now, we're mid-April, so that a one bedroom these are luxury buildings, doorman, gym, like washer dryer and unit, um, built within the past, 10 to 15, maybe 20 years at the max. Like the cheapest you're gonna get is probably like 4,500 for a one bed. The cheapest. Like that's probably one of the oldest buildings that's still out there.
yeah,
Most one beds are going to be like in the 5,000s, close to 6,000. Two beds are going to be around like 8,000, 9,000. So that's outside of most people's range. The good thing about that neighborhood though is obviously you have a mall, so you have shopping. You're right by the 7 train, like right there. So you can pretty much get anywhere in the city relatively quickly. Um, I want to say there's a Whole Foods around there somewhere. I feel like
I'm pretty
there's
sure.
there
You
has to
also
be.
have like, is that the end of the High Line? The end of the High Line like
The end
starts,
of the High Line or the beginning of it,
or
well,
the
depending
beginning,
on
depending on how you
one
want to look at it.
entrance.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
entrance to the High Line.
one of the ends is there. So it's a pretty like I think it's a pretty cool neighborhood, especially if you're looking for a specific vibe, right?
Yeah.
And you're right by the water. Um, I would say one of the biggest caveats is that you know, it's also right by the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel. So
Tons
talking
of
about
traffic.
noise, yeah, and so much noise. The newer buildings are going to be more insulated, but the older luxury buildings, um, is going to be loud. I had a friend that lived right there on like the 35th floor of a building, and it was still pretty loud, during rush hour. Daniel, shout out to you. Love you. And we miss you in New York. Come back. Um, but yeah, otherwise I think it's a pretty interesting neighborhood. Um, but it's not for everybody. It's not everybody's vibe kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a bit more. I want to say it's like it's Midtown, but like trendy Midtown.
Yeah, it's like a trendy midtown. That's
Yes.
right. And it's gonna get
Um.
bigger.
Yeah.
So part of the train yard is still uncovered or open air as it normally would be, and the same developer they're working out with the city, um, but they're gonna again build on top of the rest of it, which is right on the water, um, right on the river.
Which
And I think
people.
they're trying to even build a casino if they can get approved for it. They want to do a casino and more condos and stuff,
So
which would
people. This is a
which would change the neighborhood even more, right? Because now it's
this
gonna be
is a
like
great
super
tip.
touristy.
This is a great tip here. Rach, you just mentioned how they're gonna cover the train yard and build. So everyone, you have to remember in New York, there are no perfect apartments. There is no perfect view because one minute you have a clear
Yep.
view of like the Hudson because I'm pretty sure there's a ton of buildings over there that you can see the Hudson, and
Hmm.
you're like, oh, there's a train yard because I've seen them. Um, Give it a few years, and now that view of the Hudson might be obstructed because they're going to put a big building. Always remember that, folks. in New York, no one has a perfect apartment. No matter how much money you throw at your housing situation, it's an equalizer. It's one of the reasons why I
Hmm.
love New York because there are certain things that no matter if you're in the 1% or everyone else, we all kind of have to go through at some point and deal with. And Hudson Yards is was built really for the upper echelon of renters and owners. There are a lot of big companies that put their offices there, um,
Hmm.
which is one of the reasons I feel like a lot of these big companies had to come, force people back into working at office, more days
Yeah.
because
Again, that's another monster for another episode.
yeah, like all these things kind of tie into it.
Hmm.
Um, but Hudson Yards is a great example of a brand new neighborhood built from from the
Nothing.
from
From nothing.
nothing really.
Um, that actually, it's a good point because I was there 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, showing a client some different rentals in the area, and I was standing outside one of the buildings for a bit, and there was people walking, sure, and this is like on 11th Ave, so it's like all the way out there. There were some people walking, but the majority of people that were coming to and from those buildings were not just taking Ubers, they were taking like Uber Black XL, like giant, like,
For one person.
Suburbans. Yeah. So that's the type of person, right? Like they can afford that type of Uber, just to go home. And they probably were not even that far. I'm not really sure, but um, yeah, it's Um, obviously, with equal housing laws, we can't say who should live there, who shouldn't, but we're just trying to tell you, um, you know, the demographic of of the area, and what you find there. I think anybody, like, if you can afford it, it's a cool spot. But it's up to you as an individual, right? To decide what's best for you, aside from what you can afford, but like what your lifestyle is. And that's kind of what this episode's about, right? Talking about different neighborhoods with different lifestyles aside from the real estate side of it. Um,
Um, so Hudson Yards. So we got LES, Hudson Yards. What
and
was the other?
now
We're doing
Harlem,
Harlem. Harlem. Okay.
my old stomping grounds.
I think you should lead us on Harlem.
All
Um,
right, happy to. I love Harlem.
I know
So
you do.
not all of it, not all of it. That's like saying I love Manhattan, right? But not all of it. I like the West Side, and only parts of it. Um, so I moved. I'm a transplant, right? I'm not a native New Yorker. Um, I've been here a little over 8 years, I think, and the first 4 years I lived in Harlem. Um, the first year I lived on 111th, like right above the park. Um, it was pretty cool, but it's considered South Harlem, and by I what I mean it's considered, I mean realtors and developers call it Soha. No one else calls it Soha. South Harlem. It's not a thing. Um, and I'm telling you, 8+ years later, it's still not a thing. But I see it like in some listings for like, that area. I see like brokers trying to put like, oh, it's the fabulous Soha area. Um, okay. It's not Soha, it's just Harlem. Um, I it's an interesting mix there because you also have like a lot of old brownstones with like mom and pop landlords and stuff like that mixed in with like giant luxury buildings that are pretty new, because it's right off the park, right? So you want to give people that park view. Um so it's definitely an interesting mix of people in that part of Harlem, I would say. um you've got you're pretty close to the trains, right? You're by the 2-3, or um you have the A, C, and BD all the way over there. And then like further west, you'll have the one train, right? You
Especially out
have,
East Harlem, you got the six
I never lived in
train,
East Harlem. Yeah, you
Pinpointe.
do. And hopefully one day the Q train,
Yeah,
East
well,
Harlem.
what this it stops at 96 now, so we'll see. They'll probably keep
Yeah,
changing
I
it.
was actually just having a conversation with a friend yesterday that lived on the used to live on the Upper East Side, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I used to live. I think she's like 91st or something." And I'm like, "Girl, you're so close to East Harlem." And she was like, "No, it's the Upper East Side." And I'm like, "Yeah, but East Harlem starts at 96." And she's like, "No, it doesn't. It starts at 110th." And I'm like, "No, ma'am. East Harlem on the like the East Side, East Harlem starts at 96th Street. So sorry to tell you." And she's like, "Oh, then I was hanging out in East Harlem." I'm like, "That's fine. There's nothing against it. I'm just telling you, like, you had your neighborhoods mixed up." Because on the West Side, Harlem's 110th, where the park is.
No, yes and no. Technically, 96
Morningside.
is still is
On the
still
West
up
Side?
on the East Side.
No, on the East Side. But I'm saying on the West Side, Harlem starts at 110. On the
Yeah,
East Side, it's down onto 96.
it's a little bit higher than that, but whatever. East Harlem is its own. I swear to you, East Harlem is its own borough.
It
It's
is.
its own.
Anytime I would go to East Harlem, I would be like, I don't feel like I know what's happening here.
I might go to East Harlem this year for the festival, the Puerto Rican Day Parade
Oh
Festival.
shit.
I'm
Nice.
not
I
one
want to
that
go to
likes to
that.
go all the time, but Bad Bunny's gonna be there this year.
Oh shit.
Gotta show up for Bad Bunny.
Got it. You gotta go.
Shout out
Bad
Bad Bunny
Bunny.
out there if you're watching.
Right. Um, what else?
Um,
So our Harlem also now you have like I lived for a bit in Central Harlem. And Central Harlem is pretty cool. That's also been gentrified a bit. You have a lot more shopping. There's a Whole Foods there. There's a lot of bars and restaurants. Um, on 125th and like, you know, Lenox, above and below 125th. And then you have like Restaurant Row on Adam Clayton, like from 116th up a few blocks. Lots of different restaurants. They're all really, really good restaurants and all different, very eclectic. Um, and then of course you have like Red Rooster that everybody goes to and um, Melba's and stuff like that.
Apollo's
Um,
up there.
what?
The Apollo.
Yes, the Apollo is up there, right
There
on
is
125th.
so much
There's also a
history.
whole bunch of new buildings right behind and right next to the Apollo, and then it's all again, like you said, so much history. I remember one day just walking down the street, probably like walking home from somewhere, and I saw like just looking at all the different brownstones, because then you have all like the famous row houses, which I think are beautiful. Unfortunately, not all of them on the inside are as beautiful because they haven't been kept up. But I remember just walking one day and just looking up to see one of the brownstones, and there was like a plaque um on the outside that said Scott Joplin used to live there. Most people don't know who he is, but he was a ragtime musician. So he's really famous for the song "Entertainer," and I'm not gonna, I can't really sing it. It used to be like that old
We don't
Nokia
have the rights to
ringtone.
that.
No, but it used to be like that old Nokia ringtone. Like, so, yeah, it was really cool. Like just to be like um amongst living legends in Harlem, and to see now like again, it's now becoming a mixed neighborhood of like old school charm and luxury amenities, all glass buildings and things like that. And it's, you know, um, some people would call it progress. Some people would, you know, argue that. I'm not here to give a take one way or the other. Um, but it does make for a really, really vibrant neighborhood. And everything is walkable and everyone's pretty friendly. Like I would just walk down the street and I would know, I knew the people that ran the laundromat on the corner. Like, you just kind of it became its own community, or it is its own community. Um, so that's what I like personally about Harlem.
And I just to add on, going back to the part of like cost of living, let's say like in these different neighborhoods, Harlem, you'll still get some pretty good deals. Um, it's it's tough as like a person who's like lived here my entire life, where I see some of the pricing. I see this pricing, I'm like, oh my god, I have an idea of like what like the Lower East Side used to be, what
Hmm.
Harlem used to be, and I'm like, what, people are paying this much money to like live in these places now? It shows how New York has progressed. It shows how big, big business is, because once the corporations start coming through, when you start seeing the Starbucks pop up and the Whole Foods part pop up, those are telltale signs that your rent's about to go up.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I was lucky that my rent didn't necessarily go up, uh, but I remember there was like a cafe that opened um on my block, but on the other side of Lenox. And I went in one day because I was like, oh, I want like, it's not Starbucks and I don't really like Starbucks. So I was like, I'll go in. I walked in. It was a whole bunch of what I would call hipsters and everybody on their laptop. And I walked right out. I was like, nope, not for me. Thank you.
It's a
But
different
that's,
Harlem.
yeah, it's different. It's a different Harlem. Um, you know, I, I understand like people like it. That's totally cool. Um, but that's what I like also about Harlem is that there's something for everybody. Like, I could go from that coffee shop to, a bar down the street that's like owned and operated by Harlem locals like for generations, super super cool. It's definitely gotten more expensive in the past, few years. I think obviously the pandemic it took a pretty big hit, and so it's coming out of it now. Um, but I think you could still probably find a two-bedroom in a decent building for like 3,000, 3,500, depending on
A nice
on
two
where in
bedroom.
Harlem. Yeah.
A nice two-bedroom at that.
Um and and also like if you're looking to buy, I think it's a great neighborhood to buy in because you could buy, something, rehab it, um and live in it. I think it's a great neighborhood for that. And like I said, it's a real community where I remember once a year, like my block had a block party. I think every block at some point had a block. I would just walk outside, and then people brought their barbecues to the sidewalk, like they closed down the
And you
street.
love you some barbecue.
I do love me some barbecue. I do. Um, yeah, I mean it's a cool spot, I think. Um, but if you don't want to go to Whole Foods, there's still like, there's a Pioneer, there's like a Fine Fair, like there's all these different places. There's a C-Town, like if you go a little bit like towards Broadway. Um, and then if you go like to like West Harlem, right, then you have, people, a lot of like Columbia students and Columbia professors even live out there. Um, and again, you have like brownstones and like, smaller buildings mixed in with newer luxury developments. And Harlem's massive, right? Because like, you know, isn't like technically like Hamilton Heights is considered part of it sometimes, depending on who you talk to. Um, and that's also a really like nice neighborhood. It's like a big family neighborhood. There's also, I think it's like City College, I think something's out there.
On 137.
Yep.
Plenty of colleges.
Yeah.
Because I even think they have Boricua College, which is up, but that's Washington. That's like Washington Heights way.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Um, but for a Brooklyn and downtown kid, that for me, anything past 96th Street with the
Yeah,
Bronx,
it's not the Bronx, boy. It's
it's
not the
not the Bronx.
Bronx.
Like, no, it is not the Bronx.
But
Well, I don't
I
want to get
remember
killed
like
by all the Harlem
I
people out
I
there.
never wanted to go to Brooklyn. And I mean, I still don't want to go to Brooklyn personally. Um, but having to commute from Harlem to Brooklyn, that's a
It's a bit
bitch.
much. Yeah,
That's a
it's a
bitch.
nice trip. So you should like definitely check out our posts on navigating the trains. Um,
Yeah. We're dropping it tomorrow,
so check
um,
that post out about how to
on
navigate these
Instagram and
neighborhoods.
LinkedIn. Yeah.
Um, and always, like anything else in real estate, whatever questions you guys are, internet family has, send them our way. We are always looking for more things to talk about and things that you guys might want to hear regarding any of the neighborhoods. And this is just the first episode of many when it comes to like talking about these different neighborhoods. I think I think it was really, really good. Like I said, you have the old historic Lower East Side, also with the historic old Harlem, which gives a whole nother like topic of history where Harlem like was huge with the arts, huge with
Yeah,
the
I mean
arts.
they have their own arts center up there. It's pretty awesome. Like they have a lot of stuff for,
Alvin
entertainment.
Ailey up there,
Alvin, Alvin Ailey dance
dance.
studio is
Isn't
like
that up there as well?
56, something like that.
I
It's
think
on
they
the
might have
it's no, it's
another
by
one up
John
there.
Jay.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong. Um,
Um no, but it's like I think what you're um getting to is there's a common like through line with all the neighbors that we talked about today, which is that we're seeing them become more mixed use neighborhoods, right? It's it's not just, I mean, with the exception of Hudson Yards, I think it's mostly luxury, but I think that's going to change over time. And the surrounding parts of Hudson Yards is not luxury. So you have like this, mixture of like historic charm and luxury buildings. And I think that's true for most of the city. Um, but guys, let us know what neighborhoods you want us to talk about. I think in a future episode we'll talk about some Brooklyn neighborhoods. We're definitely going to get Josh's take on Bushwick. Have to get his take on Bushwick from being from Bushwick as well. Um, and that neighborhood has seen a drastic change in the last 10, 15 years. Um, go
and
ahead.
I feel that like Rachel was saying with like these neighborhoods becoming mixed use, but the the common denominator is for the neighborhoods to progress and grow and evolve to the extent that they have, there has to be something that the tourist or the outsider like grasp onto. And Harlem with some of its like all of its culture, tourists want like when you come from anywhere, it's like no, like I want to go see Harlem. I need to see these things. And then once you see it and you see these neighborhoods, you if you have any like chance that you want to live in New York, you're like, yeah, I want to pick these neighborhoods. I feel developers are they're not idiots. Like they're not doing this like shooting. They're
They
not
didn't just
shooting in the
randomly
dark.
pick a neighborhood out of a hat.
Exactly.
That one.
All these neighborhoods have some type of tourist attraction. Like the Lower East Side, there are plenty, and the things that are popping up now are bringing even more tourists and more new people to like see the neighborhood and have eyes on it. With Hudson Yards, like I said, you have the Bessel, you have the mall. You're right. You're pretty much near. Let's say you're close enough to Times Square, and also let's say 34th Street area where we have Macy's and like these other attractions that people come to see. Um, and then, like I said about Harlem, just the amount of culture that it exudes. Um, People want to see it. People go there, and developers are like, let's give
Yeah,
the
all the
people
jazz clubs that
something.
were there, supper
Let's give them something
clubs.
what they
Yeah.
want, right? I don't know, Rach. I think where that wraps it up for us today.
Yeah.
Um, and we talked about neighborhoods all in Manhattan. We went from let's say the luxury high-rise sky end of like Hudson Yards. We covered the tenements of the Lower East Side. And I think this was a good way to start this segment of our podcast. And I can't wait for the next one.
Yeah. And guys, come back next week for more of our unfiltered conversations. You never know, it could, be controversial.
getting there.
Um,
This is at
yeah,
what, episode 4. I say by episode 7, it might be getting spicy in here.
yeah. So guys, stay tuned. And please reach out to us on Instagram, on our website, pinpoint.nyc, and Instagram, we're at Pinpoint Group. Reach out to us. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Ask us
See me on the
questions. We could,
train. Say what's up.
yeah, say what's up. Um, Ask us questions, and maybe if we get enough questions, we can answer them in a podcast. So thank you everybody for tuning in. See you next time. Peace.
All right, guys.